how to become a young audience artist. My name is Pat Cruz. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer.
And my name is Curtis Donnelly. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. Thanks for watching. So today we want to give you hopefully answers to all of the burning questions that you've had about what it means to be a young audiences artist, what we're looking for, and how to actually make it happen.
So let's start with who we are. Young Audiences is actually the nation's largest arts and education network, and we're proud to be the founding chapter. Began right here in Maryland, in Baltimore, in 1950.
And now there's over 30 chapters in cities and states across the country.
Yeah, this picture's from back in the day. You can see how true it is. There's a kid in the afro in the back. Just look real close. So our vision is that that one day all students will have the opportunity to imagine, create, and realize their full potential through the arts. This is our vision as a nonprofit organization.
And we're working towards that every day, and one of the things we need to realize that vision is more artists, and that's where you come in. So we serve a little over 190,000 students last year in a little under 500 schools, and there's approximately 2,600 schools in the state if you count private and public schools. So we still have a long ways to go, and one of the reasons why we're not there yet is because we need more awesome, talented artists to help us do that.
The artists are truly like the heart of our organization. This is how we do what we do. This is really the essence of what makes our organization. Our excellent teaching artists who we vet through an application process, an audition process, and we also provide training through our Teaching Artists Institute. We also provide educational expertise. We really feel that it's important for our artists to connect to the curriculum, and so I'm on the staff, and we have other educators on the staff to help the artists to connect and do it authentically. We also provide logistics.
So we have a staff here of 22 people that are all working to support our artists and the schools that we work with. Our biggest team is our program team, which is 7 people that are working every day just coordinating between artists and schools and making programs happen and making sure that people get paid and that students are being served. And then finally, we have a 4-person development team, and they're raising money constantly to help reduce the cost of these programs for schools so that everybody in the state, no matter if you're living in Baltimore City or if you're living in Garrett County, can afford to have the best quality artists and the most amazing programs at their school. Last year, directly for artists, our development department raised about $500,000 just to reduce the cost of programs directly for schools. So we're talking a lot of money that goes to a lot of different schools to help it be affordable.
And we also want to make sure that we pay our artists a living wage. So we try to do that fundraising to make sure that we can meet the artists with what they need to survive and to have a living wage, but also cover that gap with what schools can afford.
And a little bit later in this video, we'll talk a little bit more about how payment works, how much people are getting paid, and how often, and all of those fun details.
So here's some data about the work that we do. This is actually from a Young Audience affiliate in Chicago. They have a larger grant to work with many schools to make them arts integrated schools, schools that are learning science, reading, math through music, dance, theater, and visual art. And they were able to compare the test scores of their kids in their schools with the regular schools, the traditional district schools. And you can see less than 60% of the kids in 6th grade in reading standard scores, less than 60% have met the standardized reading scores, where over 80% of the arts integrated students in 6th grade met or exceeded their reading standard scores.
Hold on, Pat, I got a question.
Yes.
So I know what arts integration is, teaching core subjects using the arts as the vehicle, but is that what Young Audiences does? What about if I just want to teach dance, or I just want to go sing my songs?
That's an awesome question. Yes, we do both. We feel that arts for art's sake is equally as important as arts integration. And too bad we don't have as much data on how important it is in the schools, but we as an arts organization really believe that we need to have both in the schools. Arts, music, dance, all the fine arts, theater, as well as arts integrated teaching and learning. And this is another piece of data about arts integration from Minneapolis, where the teachers volunteered to use arts integration and they use teaching artists in the schools. And this is a comparison of the teachers. So the none is the teachers who did not do arts integration, all the way to extensive arts integration in the classroom. And the gain in the test scores of the blue line, all students, the green line, free lunch girls, and the pink line, English as a second language students. And we have a similar graph for the math scores of all students and free and reduced lunch boys. So in these two graphs you can see it made an even bigger difference in our most needy kids.
Very cool. So now we know a little bit about Young Audiences and why we kind of do what we're doing and what we're working towards. So let's talk a little bit about the types of programs that we do. So you'll see on this slide, our main three, I guess, types of programs are assemblies, artist in residence programs, and professional development. So I'll start with assemblies. Assemblies is kind of what we started with in 1950. It's your kind of more standard performances, although our artists are really taking it to a new level and trying to redefine what a performance in a school looks like. But generally these are about 45 minutes long for up to about 250 students. Most of the time when schools bring us in, they're bringing us in for performing for the whole school. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about an assembly, is that you got to be able to, it needs to be appropriate for multiple age groups, multiple grade levels. We do, last year, just about 1,000 assemblies in the year across the state. You want to talk about artist in residence program?
Sure. So an artist in residence is when an artist is in a school for a series of workshops. So especially performing artists, they would start with an assembly performance, but then they would come back for 4 or 5 or more workshops to work with usually a specific grade level of students. And then after that series of workshops, they usually end with a culminating experience, a culminating sharing performance, either for their fellow students or even for their parents. An artist in residence many times is funded by our Maryland State Arts Council, one of our biggest and greatest funders, and I highly recommend you check out www.msac.org to see what their guidelines are.
And last year we did about 300 artist in residence programs, and like Pat said, they range from a minimum of 3 days all the way up to programs that are a little bit more specialized, that can be like a semester or longer. Mm-hmm. And the residencies can be both arts for art's sake residencies and arts integrated residencies. So
and there are different rules depending on the type of residency, right? Like, so our visual arts residencies are obviously much longer because it takes longer to create visual art. And that's why I suggested that Arts Council website, because you can see the guidelines for the different types of art forms there for artists in residence programs.
That's right. And finally, professional development. This is the kind of the newest area of the three in terms of our history of working with schools.
So this is actually the area of biggest growth, we would say, in the last couple of years. We have more and more school districts really interested in having our artists provide professional development to teachers, all different types of teachers, arts, music teachers, dance teachers, to language arts, science, and math teachers. We do summer institutes for whole school systems. We do one-day faculty meetings for a specific school, and sometimes they even have us just come in and do small group professional developments for specific grade levels. So we do a variety of custom design professional developments depending on the needs of the school.
I would say professional development is definitely the most custom designed because we're often working with their specific objectives and goals. And I would say most of our new artists start with us with assemblies and residences as opposed to necessarily professional development. Usually that's something that comes after spending some time working with us and figuring out really where you want to direct your work in terms of teachers, training teachers.
Good point. And now, what is the difference between a teaching artist and an art teacher? Not to be confused. And please note the disclaimer at the bottom. Let's talk about what do they have in common. But obviously, art teachers and teaching artists are artists. That is something they definitely have in common. And they both want to use their creativity to change the world. That's maybe me and my idealistic thinking, but that's what I believe. And obviously they both have to love students because they both are working with students.
Yeah, I would say if you're watching this video right now and you don't love students, you probably don't need to watch
Yeah,
the
you
rest
can
of it.
turn it off. This is not for you. And you need to love teaching. That's the special skill set that I think both have in common that makes it such a great relationship when we have teaching artists and art teachers working together. So what are the differences? This is great for if you're an undergrad and you're not sure which way to go. An art teacher is a professional educator. They have a certification, they have a degree in their specific area. They're employed by a school system or they're a part of that bureaucracy, and it is a larger, whether it's one school or if it's a school system, you are part of a bigger system. But because of that, you get more stability, but that also means less freedom. You have no control over your schedule. As a former art teacher, I can tell you this. And then you are teaching a comprehensive arts and education program. You are there to teach the fundamentals in the elementary, and you are there to teach all the different facets of arts and education and arts history, which is very different from when you have a professional artist. They are entrepreneurial, they are independent, they are willing to learn, and they don't have a certification as of yet, though we do look for art teaching artists who are willing to learn more and always willing to change and adjust, because schools are constantly having to change and adjust to prepare our students. You are an independent contractor, so all of our artists are actually independent contractors. And we'll talk more about what that means later on. You need to be a great communicator to be a teaching artist, because you have to communicate with the teachers and the schools, and you're sharing your specific art with that class. Maybe if it's steel drum, or it's beatboxing, or it's mural painting. You're not teaching the whole comprehensive arts program, you're teaching about your specific genre or art form.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the benefits, exclamation point, of being on the Young Audiences roster. We mentioned a little bit ago that we have this national network, over 30 other chapters of Young Audiences around the country doing similar work with teaching artists in schools. Collectively, we reach over 5 million students every year. Many of our artists work with other chapters. The chapter in New Jersey and Virginia are two very popular ones, as well as with chapters all across the country. In addition to that national network, we bring our artists performance opportunities. So our whole staff is here to try and maximize the amount of time that you can be in front of students doing what you do best, performing, teaching through artist in residence programs, teaching teachers through professional development. We're going to maximize the amount of chances you have to do that. Next, and this is what I hear is really beneficial and most of our artists are very thankful for, the scheduling and payment assistance. We have, like I mentioned, a staff of 22 here at Young Audiences. 7 of those are working just every day on scheduling programs for you, contracting them, making sure you have all the details that you need to get to the school and to do the program that they've asked you there to do. And then payment. If you've ever tried doing a program with the school and then later on tried to get paid from them, you probably know that it's a very time-consuming process. And there's a lot of paperwork most of the time, and we handle all of that for you. You never have to send an invoice to a school. You never have to call them asking, when they're going to send the check. And on the other side of that, we pay you no matter whether we've been paid or not. So our artists are paid every two times per month. And like I said, that's whether we've been paid or not. You're going to get paid. Most of our artists are direct deposit, or you can receive a check, and you can count on that on very specific days every month. Program logistics, handled by our full-time professional staff. So in addition to doing the scheduling and making sure you get paid, we are often coming out with you to orientation meetings so that we can facilitate those for you, or meeting with you to work on the goals of your new professional development program. Pat Cruz, Christina Burdan, and our amazing education staff are doing that on a daily basis, making sure that artists have the resources that they need, especially when it comes to the education piece. You obviously have the artistic expertise, and we will help you with the education side. Funding. Of course, funding is a huge part of what we do and a huge benefit to our artists. I mentioned that last year we raised over $500,000 just to directly underwrite the cost of programs for schools. So oftentimes our artists, when they come on with us, they realize that their programs actually can cost schools less than maybe if they were just offering them directly on their own because of the grant programs that we have. The Maryland State Arts Council grant, we have a grant here in Baltimore City called Access for All, which means that any Baltimore City school can access your program, and they're only going to pay 20% of the cost. We also have a similar program in the rural counties where rural schools are only paying 40% of the total cost. Evaluation. We hear from artists all the time that they're really interested in getting feedback about their programs, but with busy schedules, it's hard, to ask people for that feedback. Well, we ask all of our schools to evaluate all of our programs immediately after they're done in writing, and as soon as we receive a copy of that, we have a system that will send it directly to you so that you're getting almost real-time feedback. Marketing and promotion. I would say this is the biggie. We need to get your name out there. There's those 2,600 schools that we mentioned. Right now we're working in about 500 of them, and we're growing every year in terms of the number of schools that we're reaching. We do a ton when it comes to marketing. Our annual resource guide is our biggest publication. It goes to every school in the state 2 times per year, and when we walk into schools, we see that sitting on the bookshelf. It has all of our programs listed, and it's basically a very comprehensive catalog that we know schools use to choose their programs. Of course, now we have the website, a searchable database for our school partners where they can put in their goals and objectives and get tailored results for programs that might fit their needs. We're also using, of course, social networking, videos, media coverage, anything that we can do to get our name out there and our artists' names into the hands of schools. We also offer a lot of opportunities for training and participating in special workshops. We'll talk a little bit at the end about our main training program, which is the Teaching Artist Institute, or TIE. But in addition to that, we have things throughout the year where we're bringing our artists together to train. Maybe it's on the new standards or the new laws when it pertains to education. In this case, most recently, the Every Student Succeeds Act and things like that. So we're trying to make sure that we're keeping our artists up to date on the things that they need to know, and we're doing that for the most part without any charge or anything like that to the artists. And as much as possible, we also try to provide food.
This next section is what we call the nitty-gritty, everyone's favorite section. Just want to share some of the ins and outs of what it actually means, both contractually and in terms of the relationship that we have with our artists. So we mentioned before that all Young Audiences artists are independent contractors. That means we are, you're working at your own will. You can decide when or you do or don't want to take a project, and you're responsible for, taking the taxes out at the end of the year. Because of the amount of work that our staff does on behalf of our artists, from marketing to fundraising, we do have a specific type of relationship that we enter into with our artists. Now, it depends on what type of program you're going to be offering in terms of what that relationship looks like. So for assemblies, we ask that you have an assembly that you have auditioned with us and has been approved. We ask that every time you're doing that assembly in a school in the state of Maryland, that you do that through Young Audiences. If you have another assembly that is significantly different from that one that's been approved, first of all, we'd love to have you get that approved with us and offer that through us. But you have the option of still offering that assembly in schools in the state of Maryland as long as you don't work with one of the schools that we've worked with in the last 3 years. So that's approximately 600 of the 2,600 schools that we work with. So that leaves you about 2,000 schools that you can still work with. For residency programs, it works a little bit differently because residency programs are very customized. It's not a cookie cutter type program. You're not going and doing the same thing each time. We ask that if you're going to be doing residencies in the state of Maryland, that you do them through young audiences if you're going to be offering those programs. For professional development, it basically works similarly to the assemblies, in that you have a PD that you've created and you get that approved, and then you offer that through us. So what else? Liability insurance. As an independent contractor, we require that all of our artists have liability insurance. We can connect you with some resources. Most of our artists use a company that I think charges for up to a 3-person ensemble something like $140 per year, something like that. So we can get you connected with that information. We do ask that all of our artists be willing to travel anywhere in the state. We're all about access, making sure that any student, any school, any teacher is able to access all of our programs. So we do ask that all of our artists be willing to go to any place in the state. That's it for the nitty-gritty. Now let's talk about pay. So pay is different depending on the type of program. And so starting off with assemblies. Assemblies are paid, that is negotiated based on each individual artist, the number of people in the ensemble, the experience level, both with young audiences and outside of young audiences. And so those prices really can vary. Take a look at our resource guide, which you can find on our website, and you can actually see what the school price is for each artist that is on our roster. So that's actually, if the school were to just call up and pay for that program, that's actually what they would pay. And then Young Audiences does take an administrative fee on that, generally 30% of the price that you see there. So you can kind of do some quick math and see kind of what type of range of artist fees you can be looking at. Now for residencies, that's a little bit more standardized. So we pay by the session, which is in the same way that the Maryland State Arts Council, who funds most of our residencies, pays. Now the Maryland State Arts Council pays $60 per session, but we actually pay our artists a little bit more. We pay our artists $70 per session. And a session is basically a 45-minute to 1 hour period of time with one group of students. So each time you're teaching a class for 45 minutes, that counts as a session. There's other things that count as a session, like the orientation meetings, the evaluation meetings. Those are all paid by the session as well, and generally those are all 1 session long. And for visual artists, there might be also prep sessions where it's paying you the time that you need to prep the materials for the program. And
now you're ready to know what you need to do to get ready for your Young Audiences audition. And these are just some top 10 tips I put together to just help people out as we've gone through many years of watching and reviewing different artist assemblies. My first tip is start with the art.
I'm extremely happy to be here this morning. Excuse me. I'm extremely happy to be here this morning, and sorry, that happens sometimes as a beatboxer, you know. What I do is I make
Don't start by talking. The best way to grab the kids' attention is to get up there and play your music or start acting, even if it's just for 5 minutes, and then you can do a little intro. I find it's always better to start with the art.
Please start with the art. We've all been there where we've sat in an auditorium and somebody comes out and just starts talking and then everybody's asleep. If we're, as adults, can't stay awake, imagine students. So please start with the art.
Yes. I think that goes with number 2, because what we want is an audience.
And let's move a little bit. Here we go. Para bailar la bamba. During my show, I try the kids to get...
Where We're about giving our kids an authentic artistic experience. That is how Young Audiences started, and that is something we really want to stay true to in our mission. So at least 25 or more of your 45-minute presentation should be an artistic performance.
Number 3, include the audience as much as possible. This should be an interactive experience, not just a time to watch and clap very politely at the end or something. So Pat, what are some different ways that you've seen people incorporate artists?
Thank you. This is actually something I've seen, like some great opportunities where some artists just forget to think about ways they can include the students. This is something to make it more age appropriate, because little ones want to be included. You can have them repeat an important word. It's always a good idea to say that word. If it's a different vocabulary word than you think the kids are used to, say it again or ask them to repeat it with you. Sometimes artists...
Manos, shake your manos. Pies, stomp your pies. Here we go.
All of my
silent dance move.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
If you need quiet. And another way to use the audience is to actually bring volunteers up on stage.
That's always a great idea.
I've been to assemblies where I've seen somebody say, I need 5 volunteers, and then all of a sudden 50 kids are running up to the stage at the same time. Mm-hmm. So to avoid that, one good way is to ask teachers to choose the volunteers for you.
And with the teachers, you want them to pick one or tell them a specific number, because I've seen the same thing happen even with the teachers picking, because you say, I need 5 volunteers. Teachers, can you give me 5 volunteers? Then you have 5 teachers giving you 5 volunteers each. So you just need to think about and plan what you need and be clear in your instructions. It's always good to have the teachers select if you can, because they know which ones are the ones that are going to do a good job, that are not going to be afraid to be up there on the stage, and they know the ones that maybe might be raising their hand but then will be too shy to participate. So it's something that it also get the teachers more involved.
It also helps avoid that scenario where kids are sad and picked. So if you're not picking them, teachers are picking them.
Grades grouped together. Normally that's the case, where you'll have pre-K, pre-kindergarten up to 2nd grade in one audience, but then after that 45-minute show is over, you'll have another group of 3rd through 5th grade audience, or a 6th through 8th grade audience. And you need to think about how can you adjust your show for those different audiences. That is one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we get from the schools, is when they see the same exact show for the kindergartners as happening for 5th graders. So think about what vocabulary words you would use, what questions you might change, how can you make it more age appropriate, and we can help you with that.
Number 6, use visuals. Visuals are an important part of any sort of performance.
All the students with Namaste,
and
which
it also helps us make sure that we can address all types of learning styles, right? So not everybody's auditory. Some people need to see stuff up on the stage to understand the concepts and the vocabulary. So if that means finding your visual artist friend, or coming to the Young Audiences office and stealing some of our visual artists, making chart papers, using easel boards. Some artists are even starting to use, digital media, so projections and things like that. Just remember, if you're going to use technology like that, you need to be able to bring that with you, because you can't assume that the school is going to have that, and even if they do, they might not know how to work it, or it might be broken. So if you want to go that route, just make sure that you can be self-sufficient and bring those visuals with you.
That's a great point, and you should do that with your sound as well. You need to be self-sufficient. You cannot assume that the schools will have it, and many times when they do have it, it's not a very good sound system. So you should try to be self-sufficient, be there early to check in and make sure you have everything working, that the electric outlet that's on the stage is working, and that you provide This should not be your first rodeo. We want to see a polished performance for your audition for Young Audiences. Many artists have been doing this for years before they come to us. It takes at least a year to really create a performance and have it ready for our roster. So if you can you have to start by giving it away for free, and this is actually advice that we've received from the teaching artists themselves, that this is how they were able to really have an excellent performance, is by doing it for church groups, for daycares, for libraries, and having that opportunity before they bring it to us. It's very important because we really invest a lot of time in auditioning the programs, and you will see through our timeline that it takes time. If you don't pass the first audition, you'll have to wait several months before you can audition for us again. So it's a good idea to take this time to practice and get it right so that you're ready for our audition date.
Yeah, each year we get 30, 40, 50 applications for the roster. And believe it or not, we have people that come to the audition and it's the first time they've ever done it. And obviously we don't want that for our students. We feel like our students deserve the best. And so please do it however you can, wherever you can. Go to the Inner Harbor and do it on that little amphitheater out there.
There you go.
Wherever you need to make sure you have it down pat.
And just a little tip as a teacher, don't tell them, you have to teach them. And that can mean many different things. But one common error we see is when artists go up there and they are doing something that's very informational, but they're just kind of lecturing. Again, this is not a lecture demo. You need to think about what questions you can ask, how can you access the kids' knowledge, previous knowledge, how can you connect it to something the kids will understand in their lives. Think about a story or a metaphor, something you can use to teach the students. It's always better to do it in context. So if you're talking about a song, maybe have them listen for specific things, play the song, and then afterwards ask the kids, what did they hear, or what did they see, what did they imagine when they listened to that song. Think about ways that you can do active learning, not just lecturing.
Number 9.
This light in their eyes when they get to see something so different.
I feel like this, for me, this question actually comes at the very beginning of the process and also towards the end of the process when you're perfecting your assembly. Most people probably want to think prior to developing their assembly, why do you want to do this, right? Why do you want to do this type of work, and why do you think it's important to bring it into schools? And then as you're developing your assembly, and you'll see when you get to the application process and we ask you to give us a template outline of your assembly, that one of the things we're going to ask you for is what your overarching goal is. And we base a lot of our feedback and a lot of our support to our artists on those goals and helping our artists achieve those goals. So why is it important? What do you want students to know after leaving the performance? What's their takeaway? So make sure you know what these things are, what you want your end result to be, so that you can make sure to develop the program around that so that you can achieve those goals.
Great, and then finally end with the art. Q&A is always a great way to assess the students, see if they got it, see if they figured out what your overarching goal was. But it's not always the best way to end a performance. So after the Q&A, end with a bang. Even if it's just a quick 2-minute song or a quick 2-minute theatrical piece, you want them to walk away with that artistic experience in their mind. It's always a better way to end than just with the Q&A. But obviously you want to build that into your 45-minute time. Teachers love to have that, and we will also be talking about teacher guides later once you sign on to the program.
Now that you've had all your questions answered, you need to know, what do I do next?
You're ready to go. So we have here our little artist. He's going to a Young Audiences info session. So you can check out our website and see when those are happening.
We highly recommend that you attend those. You'll have a chance to meet not only some of our staff, but also some of our artists. You can ask all of your questions at that time, and you should be able to walk out of there knowing everything that you could ever possibly want to know, both from the perspective of the staff, but also the artist's perspective as well.
And if I could just put in a plug for our tours, so maybe an info session's not coming up soon, but we have tours, Young Audiences Brightside tours, every month. So you might want to check with our staff and call in and find out when is the next Brightside tours. They're open to anyone in the community. You find out about our organization and you meet an artist there, and it's a great way to start to get connected and learn more about young audiences.
Yeah, highly recommend that every artist come through a tour. And the tour dates are also on our website. They're updated every month. If you just go to Get Involved, and underneath that heading, you'll see the On the Bright Side tour. So go to that page, find out the date. You can RSVP if you want, or just show up. RSVP is better, though, just so we know you're coming. And
There's always snacks.
There's always snacks. And if you come to the ones after 5, there's also wine.
Always
So,
wine.
you know, that makes it better.
After 5.
So once you've come to the info session and you've had all of your questions answered, the next step is to go ahead and work on your application. The application is available on our website. It's on this same page that you're probably watching this video right now. You can download that and get working on it. And we accept applications on a rolling basis. So once you've completed that, you can go ahead and submit it. I would definitely say don't just randomly submit an application if you haven't come to a tour, you haven't come to the info session. We really appreciate it if you would do at least one of those two, if not both. Just so we can also make sure that you're on the right track, we can provide assistance, we can help you, and then it's not just a random paper application that we receive via email or in the mail.
Because this application is your first step to getting to the audition process. We do not accept every application we receive, and it is a competitive process. So you want to make sure you have as much information as possible included in that application, and you're ready to go. The application is online, and you can always contact us if you have any issues with the online application.
So once you do your application, generally about 2 times per year, we will move certain people through the application process onto the audition process, and that involves a committee made up of current artists, both on and off of the Young Audiences roster, as well as our staff and other stakeholders. So generally twice per year, they will go through these and make determinations as to whether we would like to bring certain artists in for the in-person audition.
And now the auditions. We will schedule those twice a year, and we will contact you once we have your application. If you've gone through the committee and gotten approved, then we will schedule your audition. We will have a live audience for you to audition in front of, including our committee, and we want to see how you do. And as we said in the past, this should not be your first rodeo. You should have this as a polished performance that's ready to go into the schools, 45-minute performance. We will obviously connect you with an audience that is what you have selected for your performance. We're going to look to see if you're looking for elementary or high school, and we will give that audience actually a chance to provide feedback, the teachers and the students, as well as our committee.
There may be a chance at some point, depending on the time of year, where we might ask you to do an initial audition that's just for the committee and the staff and not a live audience. But eventually we'll make sure that all new artists are going to be performing in front of a grade level appropriate audience so that we can make sure to get that feedback as well. Just want to remind people, this should not be your first rodeo. We said it before. Please don't come and wing it on your first try, because we've seen it all, and we'll know that you're winging it. And we don't want to have students, sit through that. So once you're through that process and you've been approved, then we get just to the final step of getting all the paperwork in order, doing contracts. For assemblies, of course, we'll be talking about the pricing for your assembly, how much you'll be getting paid. All of that stuff will be written out in our contract, and you will be approved. Then we move into the marketing phase.
Yes. Actually, one thing we did add is that we need your teacher guide information. So it says bios, photos, info. We will ask for specific information. We do create a teacher guide for every single assembly performance to go into the schools. It's one of the things that makes us competitive and that teachers really love and use before you arrive to help prepare the students. So we actually have made that a stipulation that we will not finalize the contract until that information is submitted.
And we've got a team that will help you with that. You don't have to do that on your own, but obviously it will require your input as it is your program. And then we'll finalize with you just the liability insurance, make sure you've got the information on how to get that in place and how to get those documents to us, and any other contractual, legal type stuff that we need to go into. But we've mostly talked about all of those things at this point.
Except for background checks.
Background checks, yes.
Super fun background checks.
All of our artists will have to go through a fingerprinting process and background check process. We will pay for that for our artists, and it's not very painful. But that is something that we'll have to have you do, and we'll give you all that information when the time comes.
It's something required by all the school systems in Maryland. And once you're in, then you are a part of the Young Audiences family. You'll be on our website. You'll be in our resource guide that goes out to every school in the state. You will be eligible for our Young Audiences grants through the fundraising that we do. And you're part of the family. We have annual meetings. We have annual get-togethers and parties. And we just are a whole community of support for teaching artists across the state. Ta-da!
Ta-da! Woo! So, maybe you've just watched this video and you've realized, wow, this is a lot. I don't have, I don't feel like I have enough experience. I don't have, I haven't thought through my program yet. I just don't really know where to start. There's something for you too.
Yes. So maybe you are not ready, but you want to be ready. You should come to our Teaching Artists Institute. So go back to the YAMD page and go to programs and click down to where it says the Teaching Artists Institute, and we have a whole fabulous support system and training program for artists who want to develop their programs and want to work in schools, but they're not sure where to start. We can help you with that as well. So this is the end. And we hope that you will join our mission to help transform education and bring innovative education through arts and arts integration into the schools.
Thanks for watching. We hope to see you soon at one of the tours or one of the artist info sessions, or just reach out to us directly if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you.